G'day poker people, welcome back to the vlog. We got some poker to talk about. After flying halfway around the world to Florida, I ended up spending Christmas away from my family and I got in my feels about it for sure, as we covered in the last video. Fortunately though, we're in that poker boom period, which is the week between Christmas Day and New Year's Eve. At least it was a really good time for live cash games back in Melbourne. Now that I'm in the new city in Tampa, I'm definitely keen to see what the games are like here. So I buy into a 2-5 game for $1,000 at 1 AM on a Monday morning. You can tell I was looking for a distraction from my woes that I was buying in at this time, but we're in the game, which is where this first interesting hand happens. A very short stacked under the gun player goes ahead and open limps, and then a tight aggressive cutoff goes ahead and makes it 20. I'm on the button with pocket nines. I go ahead and 3-bet it to 70 here, which is like the standard play versus the cutoff open. I will say the dynamics with a short limper under the gun do change it a bit, because the chances they limp raise all in are pretty likely. I don't think it affects the dynamics enough where you should be flatting or folding pocket nines, but it is something to consider in spots like this. I made it 70, and then the under the gun player does rip it all in for 150, and the cutoff gets out of the way, which is actually pretty fortunate because we'd be in a bad spot if they did decide to VPip. But now that they've folded, we got an easy snap call here. Some chance I'm behind for sure. I definitely think if the under the gun player had aces, kings, queens, they probably would go for the limp raise all in. But when people are short stacked in a live cash game, I can definitely see them just ripping it all in with some utter nonsense, like just trying to like double up or go home type thing. So we throw in the call, and then we're heads up to a flop, which runs out bloody awful for pocket nines. But then the villain says, "Oh, you're good, bro." I show my pocket nines and they end up mucking their hand. So I guess they did have like a pair worse than the sixes, or maybe a wheel ace, because it feels like everything else in the world got there. I ain't complaining though. We're raking in this pot. What a way to start this week off. So that game ended up breaking at about 7 AM. I guess people had to go to work or something like that at that time. I went home and I did get some sleep before coming back and attacking an afternoon session on the same Monday. And honestly, this session was just kind of shambles from the start. I maybe got like 5 or 6 hours sleep before I went in. I wasn't feeling the most rested. So I got a green tea when I got to the table, and it came with a bloody straw in it, which, I mean, it's not a big deal. It was just kind of weird that you put a plastic straw in a hot green tea. Regardless though, that wasn't the main thing that I was tilted about. I didn't eat before I sat in the session, which is just like, honestly, it's just like a dumb thing to do, because as I'm sure a lot of y'all can attest to, hunger at the poker table directly correlates to tilt. So I knew I had to eat. I was already in the session, but you get half an hour to leave the table before they pick your chips up. So I went to the salad bar across the casino to get something healthy using my casino comps. And when I get there, it's some teenager who's working behind the counter at the salad bar, and I could just tell they didn't know what was going on. It might have been their first day there or something. So no hate on them. I've been a teenager on my first day at work too. I'm sure I was just as bad. But I was kind of like, why is no one supervising them? They obviously don't have the experience to do this themselves, but whatever the case, I'm second in line at the salad bar, and it takes this teenager about 10 minutes to serve the person in front of me. And at this point, I like considered just leaving and going and getting a burger instead. But I already felt pot committed after the 10 minutes. I felt like I should just like stick it out and wait to get my salad. Of course, it takes this teenager like 15 minutes to serve me. And by the way, I'm at a salad bar. Like, they're not even cooking anything. They just have to put the ingredients in a bowl, mix them up, toss the salad, then put the salad in a takeaway box, and then handle the payment with my casino comps card. Like, really shouldn't be that complex. I know it's a kid's first day or whatever, but it took him about 15 minutes. And at this point, I've got a very short window before I can get back to my seat at the poker table and not get picked up. So I literally have to run from one side of the casino to the other. And if you all have ever been to the Tampa Hard Rock, you know that's a long distance to make in a short amount of time. But when I do get back to my table, another reg was trying to get me picked up from the table, but I made it back in time, ended up posting my blinds, playing a few hands before I went to the back of the poker room where there's like a seated area to eat my salad. And then when I opened the takeaway box that my salad's in, I shit you not, it was like half a salad in there, and it cost me like, I used my casino comps to buy the salad, so it didn't cost me any real money, but like if I did pay with cash, it would have cost me $38. It takes me 19 hours of playing 2-5 to work up that much money in comps. And that's not to mention it was like the worst service I've ever had at like a food place, including back in Australia. So So after finally eating that salad, shockingly, I was still hangry. And now, like, I'm extra tilted because it's not just the anger, hunger tilt. It's also, I've had this really bad experience with the salad bar. And honestly, like, I'm sure deep down in the back of my brain, dealing with the situation of still being a little bit homesick and just not having processed all those emotions properly. And it was just a shambles day. Before I left though, I did play this one interesting hand. So we got the $10 button straddle on. A tight passive player limps under the gun, and then it folds to my low jack, and I look down at the favorite hand in all of poker, the American Airlines, the Pocket Rockets, the aces. I go ahead and over limp, joking, I raise it up to 50, and then I get a call from a tight aggressive cutoff, as well as the passive player. So we go 3 ways to a flop, 10-9-4 rainbow. The under the gun player checks it over to me here, and definitely want to bet on this board. I did allude to the under the gun player being tight and passive, and I actually think that they're so tight passive they might limp call with a lot of hands that are over pairs on this board, and obviously they're never going to fold those hands on these boards, so I want to maximize value before they get scared off on certain turn cards. So I go ahead and bet 75, which is a big bet multi-way, and then something interesting happens because the cutoff actually min raises me to 150, and then the under the gun player does call the 150. So this is a pretty interesting scenario because I actually think the under the gun's range here should be very, very strong. If they did flop 10-9 suited or a set, I think they're always just going to flat the 150 instead of 3-betting. Having said that though, I don't think we can fold just yet. Sure, the cutoff has 2 pairs and sets on this board as well, but it is somewhat possible that's a very specific dynamic that the cutoff is semi-bluffing queen jack suited, or maybe just like stabbing with king queen offsuit or something like that, and then the under the gun player is flatting with a worse overpair to my aces, or maybe like ace 10, although I think they're so tight they might consider folding that type of hand here. With all of those dynamics considered, I don't think we can be folding pocket aces getting this price, so I do throw in the call, but we are definitely proceeding with a lot of caution going forward in this hand. The turn is the 7 of hearts. Under the gun checks, I go ahead and check it over to the cutoff, and they go ahead and rip it all in for 400. The under the gun calls the 400, and at this point, I'm almost certain that my pocket aces are no good. I said the specific scenario where I was ahead on the flop was where the cutoff was semi-bluffing, under the gun had a worse hand. I think it's still somewhat possible the under the gun does have pocket kings, pocket queens, pocket jacks. I know that sounds crazy tight at this point, but yeah, I actually do think that is possible. I think the frequency at which the cutoff is semi-bluffing has significantly gone down, and they got 2 callers on the flop. Like if I'm them and I've got queen jack here, 2 people call me on the flop, I'm like, I'm just going to take a free card and try and outdraw on these 2 really strong ranges on the river. So I think it's very likely that they have a hand that's 2 pair or a set, so I'm absolutely positive I'm no good here. Under the gun could still have me beat with 2 pair or a set. So I do decide to fold the aces, and then we get some good news because the cutoff shows a 10-9 suited, let's go. Then the cutoff gets some bad news because under the gun shows the pocket nines, so I was absolutely cooked here, drawing the 2 outs on the flop, and then I didn't hit some bink miracle out on the river because it was the 3 of hearts. So the under the gun type passive player ends up scooping this whole pot, having not taken one aggressive line in the entire hand. Hey, power to them. I'm just happy that I made a good fold in this otherwise shamble of a day session. I'm honestly kind of proud that like I didn't let any of the factors that had me emotionally tilted tilt my play at all, but this was definitely the time in the session I had to leave because it was going to be a perfect storm of all the outside factors tilting me. Oh, and now my aces got cracked. I could see myself punching off if I stayed any longer. So I did leave, go home, and finally got a good feed. So we're back into the 2-5 on a Tuesday evening, and I'm under the gun +1 with ace 5 of spades. I go ahead and make it 15, and I get no less than 4 different callers. So we are super multi-way to a flop. Jack 8-6 with 2 spades. So we do flop the nut flush draw, so I can't complain. But when the action checks to me, I do decide to check it here. I could go either way between checking and betting. I mean, we have the like nutted semi-bluffing hand, but betting into 4 different people is kind of dicey. Could go either way. I checked it in this instance, and then the cutoff goes ahead and makes it 50, and then things get interesting because the button rips it all in for 285. Then the action folds back to me here, and now I think this is actually a really gross spot. It's one of those like I hate all 3 options spot. Would hate to fold since I have so much equity with a nut flush draw. We could actually be ahead of some of the hands in the button's range if they're semi-bluffing with a worse draw. Having said that, I don't want to 3-bet either just because we're never realizing any fold equity when someone's all in, and then calling out of position multi-way just sucks as well. So it's really, I don't like any three of the options, but the gun's to my head and I do have to choose one of them. I think if I had this decision back, I would probably just flat, keep the pot small, give the cutoff a price to come in with some of their worst draws, maybe hit a spade and stack them as well. It's not what I did in game. I went ahead and 3-bet it here. Really don't like this play. I think it is a pretty significant mistake because part of the reason you like check raising nut flush draws is to realize some fold equity, but it's like impossible for me to realize fold equity against a guy all in, of course. But yeah, I made the mistake. I did go ahead and 3-bet it to 600, and then the cutoff actually calls. So now we got a main pot and a side pot, just me and the cutoff, and the turn is the 2 of clubs. Absolutely hate seeing that. Really wanted to hit a spade. I think it's pretty likely that the cutoff does have a hand that's like a strong jack, or even a set or 2 pair. I think a lot of their worst draws might have folded to my 3-bet on the flop, so I really do need to get there. I don't think any of those hands are going to fold if I go ahead and bet out here, since there's so many draws and I can have all of them. I don't think they'd be folding much at all if I bet here, so again, I just wouldn't be realizing much fold equity. So I do check it over, just trying to get to a river as cheap as possible. And unfortunately, the cutoff does check back, so we do get that free river, which is a repeat 2, no spades. So unfortunately, we don't get there with a nut flush draw. Maybe I'll get really lucky and the cutoff had a combo draw and we'll just win with ace high on the river, but we know we're going to be behind to at least one of the cutoff and button. Go ahead and check it over the cutoff. Unfortunately, they do check back. I show my ace high, but then the cutoff shows ace jack of hearts. So they did have the strong jack and they're going to end up scooping the side pot. The button shows queen deuce of spades. So they did have the naked queen high flush draw on the flop, but then they went runner trips. So they're going to scoop the main pot and we lose almost the maximum on this hand after my aggressive 3-bet on the flop. Yeah, I really don't like that play, and if I could have it back, I would probably just flat. Not that that's a great scenario either, but yeah, it's honestly a pretty sick spot on the flop. Let me know how you will play it in the comments below. Let's see if we can redeem the bad decision making in this next hand. A tight aggressive under the gun player raises it up to 20. They get 2 callers, and then I'm in the small blind with ace king offsuit. I go ahead and 3-bet it up to 130, but then the under the gun player goes ahead and 4-bets it to 400. The field callers fold and the action's back on me, and this again is another pretty sick spot. I've talked before in these videos about how tight the dynamics are in Tampa, facing 3-bets and 4-bets, so there is legitimate concern that I'm no good here with my ace king, and it's not like I can just call and see a flop because the SPR is going to be less than 1 and I'm out of position here, so I think I've got to go all in or fold. And with the concern that the dynamics are really tight here in Tampa, punting away 1,000 to this opponent's tight range would be a spew. So that leaves me with the one option I have. I know it's the boring option, as someone famous always says. I do decide to fold this hand, and actually fortunately the under the gun player was kind enough to show us they did have pocket kings, so let's go. We make a good disciplined fold here to perhaps redeem ourselves after the undisciplined aggressive play earlier. Despite the slight redemption at the end, I was pretty unimpressed with my play that session, so I did go home, have a bit of a rest before trying to come back again on the Wednesday evening and hopefully play better this time. I'm in the +1 position again with king jack of diamonds. I make it 15, and this time I get 3 callers, so we're making some progress, and we see the flop king 6-5 rainbow, so we do make top pair. When the blinds check it over to me here, I could go either way between checking or betting. Really don't like c-betting into 3 different runners much at all. Having said that though, we do have a strong hand that can definitely get called by worse on this board, so it could go either way. I checked it in this instance. If I had the decision back, I think betting might be slightly better. Whatever the case, I checked it here, and then the low jack goes ahead and makes it 30. The blinds fold, the action's back on me here, and I considered check raising, but I think it's just a bit too thin with king jack kicker. If we had a better kicker, I would like check raising more because we can get called by worse kings and straight draws. But I think with the jack, it's just kind of borderline, so I do decide to throw in the call here. And then we see the turn, which is the 6 of spades. So great turn card for our hand specifically, because it makes villains nutter combinations a lot less likely. There's less combinations of pocket 6s, 6-5 suited. There's one combination of king 6 suited. So when we go ahead and check it over to them and they bet at 80, I think I can't do anything but call here. It's less likely they do have a nutted 2-pair plus hand. However, they definitely could have all the combinations of king queen offsuit offsuit. And I wouldn't be that surprised if they had ace-king either. I've talked about the tight dynamics in Tampa before, and they definitely wouldn't be the first person to only flat ace-king pre-flop. I do throw in the call here, and then we're heads up to a river, which is the 2 of hearts. I check it over to the villain again. Then they go ahead and bet 200, and now I'm really starting to be concerned. Like I said, pretty much everything that's king queen plus on this board the opponent can have, and it's a race of aggression by an opponent in Tampa. If the dynamics in Tampa are that tight and people don't triple barrel bluff often, I definitely think this could be a decent hand to just fold here. In game though, I did throw in the call and the opponent showed pocket sixes. I'm really not that happy with this call. I've gone on and on about how tight players in Tampa are, and the way you beat that type of person is by making good folds, disciplined folds in spots like this, and I just didn't pull the trigger on it at this point, and I'm pretty disappointed with the play, to be honest. And once again, we're going to need to try and redeem ourselves with some good play here. In this next hand, a tight aggressive under the gun player limps, and then a tight aggressive cutoff makes it 20, and I'm on the button with the jiggities, the JJ Abrams. I go ahead and 3-bet it to 70, and then a passive big blind cold calls my 3-bet. Then the action's back on the under the gun player, and this is the second time this has happened. I get limp 4-bet raised from an under the gun player. They go ahead and make it 180. The cutoff folds here, and now I'm very, very concerned that my jacks are no good. This dynamic's a bit different from the first hand in the video, where it was a short stacked opponent ripping it all in, just looking to gamble, double up or go home type thing. This villain has 1.5 thousand in their stack. I don't think they're trying to just like gamble with that much money. I actually think this is re-raise trap situation, and very, very likely they do have pocket aces. I don't even think it might be kings, bro. I think it's just aces mostly when they take the 4-bet limp re-raise line. So absolutely no world am I ever 5-betting here. However, being that we are in position and we're getting a pretty decent price to call, I think this is a good set mine spot. Typically, I don't like set mining in poker games, but I think this is a very specific dynamic where it probably is going to be a good play. So I do throw in the call, and then the big blind calls as well, leaving them like very short stacks. They have $220 behind, which is definitely important information to keep in mind going 3 ways to a flop of 5-5-4 with 2 spades. The big blind checks it to the under the gun, limp re-raiser. Then they just bomb it. They go ahead and bet 500 into 555. And yeah, I was convinced pre-flop that they had aces. This giant bombing on the flop just convinces me of that fact further. So I do the only sensible move here, in my opinion. I fold my jacks. The big blind calls all in for less. And then, what do you know? The under the gun player turns over 7 deuce. No, I'm just playing. They turn over the pocket aces, and we actually would have got there on the run out, but I'm still beaming. We made the good laydown here, good discipline, slightly redeem ourselves from the poor decision in the previous hand. The big blind folded, by the way, so we never saw their hand. But even with that in mind, I just haven't been playing well these past 3 days. I've been playing a lot though. I played 33 hours and 10 minutes across these sessions. The bad choices I made in hands definitely affected my results though, and I ended up losing $1,127. I wasn't feeling as bad or as homesick as I was in the previous video on Christmas Day, but it seemed pretty obvious to me from some of the undisciplined plays I was making with the aggressive lines and the not wanting to fold big hands that it was affecting me in the back of my head. And I mentioned in the last video that Christmas Day I was glad it happened because it clued me into what was important to me overall in life, realize a good gamble life balance, but I hadn't done anything to remedy the situation yet. Like literally the next 3 days I did nothing but grind more poker. So I resolved to myself that once I got home I would at least take a day off poker and try to do something to maybe start the ball rolling on me trying to resolve some of these issues and process these emotions a bit better. But as I was walking towards my car in the parking lot, a mysterious black car will pull up next to me. What happened next will leave me absolutely shook. So make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel because we're going to cover what happened with that black car in the next video. I do appreciate you watching all the way to the end of these things. It really does help my channel's analytics, so it's greatly appreciated. If you want to check out leebets.com and pick up some cool anti-gambling gambling club merch, we have t-shirts, hoodies, hats. You can check it all out there at leebets.com. But for now, I'm out of here. Peace.